Okay, here we go.
Test, 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 test.
Roll music?
Let's roll it.
Welcome to the Unknown Morning Show.
It's the show where we explore radio,
Podcasting,
TV,
gear,
gearheads,
and making money with a hot mic and other stuff too.
This is the Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandy Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley. Well, here we go on another edition of the Unknown Morning Show. We are the gearheads today, aren't we?
I think gearheads is appropriate. Yes, yes.
We're kind of, doing X's and O's before, and I was thinking things like, is our first microphone kind of, can it be something that runs in parallel to like your first date? Is it something that's always going to be that memorable? What do you think?
Well, I don't
Mandy?
know. I mean, are you referring to like my first mic that I'd spoken to at the radio station?
No.
Or, okay.
Because those, at least.
The first one that I've bought. Okay,
Yeah.
That's fair. Well,
Yeah.
That one's in the car.
That one's in the car.
That one's actually in the car.
So, and of course, when you talk about things, like a mic, it could be mic any year. Of course, we got to break it down into the brand. What brand do you have?
It's a Shure SM57.
Oh, the stage mic. Okay.
It's a stage mic,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
And I bought it when I was DJing gigs back in the early 2000s.
I've got a couple of those packed away where I've gotten them at garage sales. I have a pouch with just 3 of those.
Mm-hmm. Have
it in the gig bag just in case.
Yep, it's a handy mic. I used it for years DJing parties and nonprofit stuff, and then, in a jam last week, we share this studio that we're in with my friend Ashley.
Yes.
That does the Celebrating Women podcast with me. Well, she has another podcast that she does as well. And her partner was in from out of town, and they were recording, and they needed 2 of our mics. Well, we didn't communicate well, and I had an interview I was doing. So they've already got the 2 mics set up in the other room. I walk in and there's one mic, and Ashley's like, "Oh, I didn't know you were coming in today." I was like, "I didn't know you were coming in today. I guess we should have texted each other."
One hand.
Yeah. And so she was like, did you need the other mic? And I was like, "I did, but I have one at home. Let me run go get it."
Yeah.
And so I ran home and grabbed the Shure mic, and I actually have another mic in my home studio too. So I grabbed the XLR connection out of the back of that one and hurried back up here and did my interview.
I was doing a very specialized voiceover gig some years ago where they just wanted the voice, nothing processed, and I was getting started in it. My wife was at Goodwill and picked up for $5 like a Logitech gamer mic, plug, played. I must have made 30 grand over like 5 years on that little thing, but I eventually ended up getting a Blue Yeti.
Yeah.
And those are always, if you sit there and Google like the best USB mics you can use for voiceover, people like that. The only rap they have is that they're really, have you ever had a Yeti, a Blue Yeti?
No, but I've seen one.
They're heavy. I ended up getting a desktop stand because the rap would be if you put them on a boom mic arm, you had to make sure your boom mic wasn't cheap and it could actually hold the weight.
Yeah.
So when I ended up getting a boom mic for my house mic, my Rode mic, I ended up getting a Rode arm, which is really heavy duty. It's like what you have.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that these are heavy duty.
They're not.
They work for what we've got.
Okay, they're not the light ones where it's like the parts are kind of scissored looking.
Oh, okay.
They look like they're cheap. They're not cheap
yeah.
at all. When I ended up upgrading, I ended up with the Rode NT1A, which I like a lot. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how much I liked it until I was doing some A/B work. I had like an old Sennheiser stashed away.
Yeah.
It's the 412. It's the
broadcast mic.
Yeah, the broadcast mic where I acquired like 20 years ago.
I've spoken into a few of those.
Yep. Of course, we all have. And I sat there and I was going A/B and I'm going, oh yeah, this is much better.
You picked up one of those Logitech mics for me, and I used it for the same gig for a while.
They do what they're supposed to do. And really, I mean,
if you've got a good processor.
If you have and the other thing too is I think that if you sit there, and what I used before is I had Cool Edit on my computer with my Logitech, and I was fine with the results.
Yeah, same.
I didn't do any processing. I didn't care to. I just made sure that the ends were clipped and they went to their final destination. But
so how many mics do you have? Would you say?
Oh boy, probably about 6.
Really? Which one but you use the Rode?
The Rode the most.
Yeah.
I ended up getting a Audio-Technica mic. I think it's the 2040. I'm trying to remember the exact number. I was sitting there at a hawk shop about a year ago, and I had some mad money burning in my pocket, about $100. I got it for 40. went in, hooked it up, A-B'd it with the Rode and went, yeah, I don't need it. But I have it as backup.
Yeah.
I have the Sennheiser as backup.
Yep.
I have a pouch with about three Rode mics that I have for my DJ gear because I haven't done a gig since your wedding. I've kept the gear because there was one time back in 2000 when I was unemployed, and for about 6 of the 8 months, I ended up having like 3-4 gigs a month, and that supplemented everything. That
Yeah.
I was able to limp through the whole unemployment thing a lot better.
Yeah.
But looking at your space, it's so interesting because to me it reflects you.
Well, thank you.
It's airy, it's cheery. It's more in line what I would think if people were to see podcast situations on what they would see, which is there's 3 chairs, there's tables. It's kind of like a audio bistro, seriously.
An audio bistro. Yes.
Meaning
yeah,
like,
thank you.
Meaning
like a little cafe.
Yeah, a little cafe. You know,
Thank you.
I expect a nice lad to come in here with hors d'oeuvres.
We do have snacks and coffee.
Where mine is one of my old DJ tables. It's the folding table with a packing blankets on top. I have my love seat in back, and on one side it's a clothes closet, so I have everything that can pad. And I hook it up to a DBX 286 processor. It's
a great processor.
Oh, I love those things.
Yeah.
What's the interface that you rock over there?
It is a Zoom PodTrack P4. So essentially, it's got XLR connections into it from the mics.
Yeah.
So they're XLR into the mic and into the recorder, and we record to a scan disc on it.
Is the Zoom that is the same thing that the reporters have for the recording?
Yeah, it's the same brand.
Okay.
Yep.
Bill Coates from KTBB, our sports director there, he was Super Bowl. He was at Rangers training camp. He was interviewing players off of Zoom.
Yep.
And yeah, those seem to be really well. It's not like the old days where you had a tape recorder, you had a cassette, and man, if the cassette went wrong, you were in big trouble.
Well, a lot of reporters now just use their iPhones because iPhones have great mics, great recording software. They just lay them on the table to like catch things so that they can go back and write. Like, journalists that are actually writing, not necessarily relaying audio in a broadcast style. But this has worked really well. I got the recommendation from my friend Mike. He has a podcast. It's the Cologne podcast.
Okay.
And he's done really well with it. And he's been encouraging me for years to do one. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Well, then when Ashley and I started getting set up about a year ago, actually, March 21st, 2023 was our first episode.
Seems longer than that.
Does it?
Well, it seems like you've been putting out quality product for some time, or we've been talking about it. The odds and
we've been talking about it. Yeah. Yeah. And so when I was getting ready to get this started, one of the biggest hurdles I felt like for me was I had never done it before. So I had this fear of doing it wrong or not having the right equipment and also like not having a topic. Well, then Ashley and I determined the topic. And so I was like, okay, well, I know someone who can give me the information on what I need.
Yeah.
He's doing this successfully. And so I bought the mics and the booms, and she and I kind of cobbled some other things together. And really within about a week or 10 days, we had this space created, at least the beginning of what this space is now. And we hammered out a show, and it was like it just came together magically. It's one of those things where it's like when something comes together that well, that fast, you're like, okay, I should keep going with this,
I'm kind of amazed when I look at the room because, most people, when they think of podcast / broadcast, they probably think of a blank room. When I say blank, a blank room that has a lot of diffusion material, whether it's blankets, whether it's audio tiles, and you have windows, and I don't hear any of like
the reverb from all of the
reverb,
the hard
audio
stuff.
bounce. I don't. Yeah. It does not have a hard sound at all.
Thank you. We like it. It's kind of become, if you can imagine, Mandy's Clubhouse.
Yes,
that's kind of the vibe up here. Like what my room. If I could have made my room as a teenager any way I wanted to, that's kind of what this has become. We have like beige and black walls, and then we have a pink neon light that says Celebrating Women on the black wall for the other podcast. And then as NSYNC re-released their first song in the last 15 to 20 years, I dug out some old posters. And so we have a couple of NSYNC posters on the wall. So yeah, we've had fun with it.
I do like Mandy's Clubhouse. I just wrote that down because that's a keeper.
Yeah,
that's a keeper. That's a trademark type thing.
Yeah, it's fun, and Ashley's been really generous with the space. This was her space as a photographer, and she she opened it up to me and lets me office here now as often as I'd like. And we kind of share the space and make it work. It's great.
And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, that's Mandy with 2 E's, not a Y. I'm giving you some. I saw.
Did you see that social media post? It blew up.
I saw your post on
funny.
Facebook. My wife logged in and said, "Yes, it's Rosanna, not Roseanne." I was going to say, "Well,
or Roxanne, or
it's chalk, just plain old chalk." When I was looking at mics, one of the things that I found not so much difficult, because there's a couple friends that I would talk to and say, "What do you think about this?" And he had a Rode mic, but still, if you sat there and Googled a mic and said reviews, you can sit there and find, they give you the top reviews, the bottom reviews.
Yeah.
How did that go for you? How did that land for you? Was it difficult to judge?
No, I trusted my gut, which is a thing for me, and probably a whole other podcast another day.
Okay.
But I really trust my gut on things. And so when something feels good or it feels right, I typically just go with it. I can overthink some things, but sometimes I just get a feeling or just a vibe. I pulled up a few reviews, looked at Amazon, saw different things, talked to Mike, and just kind of used my own judgment too. And this one review that I had, it lined out. I don't even remember what website it was on. I have a link to it somewhere. But this was the mic. I think they had like 4 mics on there that they recommended.
Yeah.
And for price point, this looked like the best one for me. Ashley and I weren't willing to put, thousands of dollars into starting this because we didn't know what it would be. And so a few hundred we were willing to do. And that's really, I think all in, we were probably, between the two of us, we each maybe spent $300 to $400 to get started. I mean, it was not bad.
Well, and I think the thing is too, sometimes when it comes to gear, especially if you look in forums, specifically things like that, sometimes the sexy choice can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, the Neumann mics, the ones that gives you the voice of God sound, and they're wonderful, and they're $3,000 though. Because that's the other thing too.
But do we really need to sound like God?
No.
Nah.
And
we just sound like Chuck and Mandy.
Yes. And can you recoup that money? Really.
Return on investment's big deal. Yep.
Is it going to be something at the end of the day you go, well, I have the cash back. This is going to work well for me. It's kind of like, I made a ton of money on my little tiny Logitech mic, so I can, put that here, and here, which was, when it came to my DBX processor, my Focusrite interface, which is like the $90 one. It's the one with the 2 connections. And it's, and Focusrite is considered a nice starter brand too, so it's probably be $550.
Yeah.
And that's not bad at all.
No, when I set up my home studio, I say I did not set it up. Actually, our friend Don Jones set it up for me because
Don listens to things in layers. Jeez,
man, and he had his own home studio, and so I said, hey, if my husband and I make you and your wife dinner and we give you some wine, would you help me set up my home studio? And pretty much he did. So he told me what to buy. I purchased everything, and we went through Sweetwater Music, which I've had great results with. Incredible customer service. Great customer service. In fact, they reached out to me recently. I purchased a piece of software, and they were like, hey, just want to make sure this was working out well for you. But Don helped me set all that up. I think that was probably in 2014 maybe. And I was using an iMac, or actually, no, I was using a MacBook Pro at the time. And he recommended, and I purchased the Mark of the Unicorn processor.
Sure.
I think it's like 800 something. I don't know. It's been a while since I purchased it. And I'm not as I don't get excited about gear as much as others do. It's just if it works for me, I'm happy with it. And I trust the people who are recommending it to me. So I have that processor. I have an RE40 mic, a professional boom. At the time, I had some pretty solid speakers. I don't know. Did I give you those speakers? I think I did give you those speakers. I sold those speakers to you. I can't remember if you gave me coffee or money for those.
I think it was coffee and about $40.
Something like that, yeah. But yeah, it was a pretty cool professional studio setup. And for the most part, I'm still using it today. I sort of switched over to my iMac from my MacBook Pro, and I was doing some extra recording at the station at the time. I was doing 2 stations locally in Tyler, and then I was doing 3 or 4 other stations that were across the country at the time. One in Temple Clean, one in Midland, Odessa, a couple in Wyoming, Casper, and Cheyenne. And so at that point, I wanted to have the flexibility to be able to record at home if need be.
Sure.
And then I did a few things for our friend Eric Jantra off and on, and other stuff too. Like, gosh, I don't know. The list is endless. It seems like random people would want me to record commercials for them and things like that. So it was nice to have the flexibility at home.
And plus, when you're looking at gear in general, I mean, there's some reputable guys that'll give you reviews. Like if you go to YouTube, I was looking at one of them, Podcast Stage, and I'm trying to remember the other guy.
Is that the name of the YouTube channel, Podcast Stage?
Yeah, and I'm trying to pull him up on my phone because I can't remember the guy's name. But it's one of those. If you look and just ask for mic reviews, he does shootouts, like mic shootouts, or he'll pull up a mic and say, this is what I have, and just break it down for what it can do for you. Or sometimes it'll have two mics, like, he'll have the Neumann mic that's the voice of God, and he'll have the Rode next to it, NT1A, and say, okay, how does this compare?
Yeah.
And
is it enough of a difference to pay the price difference?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although our friend Rod Wayne was telling me, and he went to Don's studio, right? Don is a Neumann there. So Rod goes and records his commercial for him. He hears it on air at one of the stations, and he said, I didn't recognize myself. It was that good.
Don is also a wizard with software.
Yeah.
He hears things. He understands it's not Cool Edit anymore. What's it called? Adobe Audition.
Yes.
He understands nuances and plugins with Adobe Audition better than anybody I have ever met.
Yeah.
Not that I've met a ton of people that do that kind of work, but Don's a wizard. And the way he used to process my voice, even off the RE40s at Town Square Media when we worked together, man, I sounded smooth. You could put me on a Macy's commercial nationwide. I sounded smooth. But I have not been able to replicate that sound personally because Don had created like the perfect processing points on my voice to make my voice sound as crystal clear, warm, wonderful. I mean, it's like magic. He's a wizard.
Did he put together like a special macro for you? Where all
yes.
Yeah.
And he had it saved. All he had to do was click Mandy, and then he layered that onto my voice each time. And, at one point I was like, will you set that up for me? Would you set that up for me on my home studio? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then we never got around to it. But, Don, will you set that up for me?
Sure. I'll give you much wine. I'll
actually pay you for it. Well, that's the thing I've learned. I didn't really understand at the time whenever I was basically asking for a friendly favor. I didn't understand that those are actually things you can purchase.
Oh,
you
plugins.
You can purchase plugins that from gurus like Don.
Sure.
And since then, I've purchased a couple, well, really just one, but I purchased it from Sweetwater to help remove room noise.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I have to do something that needs to be super crystal clear, crisp, and clean, I can take out any reverb that would happen off of these walls. And it's a really cool plugin. And it wasn't that bad. I think it was like maybe $30 or something.
It's amazing. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, I have Audacity that I use. The radio station at KTBB, they have Adobe in the main production room. Everybody else has Audacity. And when I had a freelance voiceover, when I had my voiceover gig where I was just doing that, when I was between the KTBB stays, it was Audacity too. So I ended up getting used to Audacity and liking it a lot. One more software question.
Sure.
Have you ever had any experience with a software? It's free, well, almost freeware, called Reaper?
No, but I feel like either you have told me about it or somebody else has told me about it. I think it was you.
I'd heard a lot about it. Reaper's one of the. I think it's $60 for like the amateur license, and if you make bucks, they ask you to go
Toss
for $200. Yeah, which is kind of
it's fair.
It's fair.
Yeah,
because I've heard a lot of great things about it. It's one of these. It has a ton of flexibility, but I tried the demo part, and I would sit there on like whether it's Audacity or Adobe, and you see the red button, you go press record. Mm-hmm. This is one of these softwares where you have to do this and do that and do that. And I go, oh, and that was one of the raps against it. It has so much flexibility. It has so much customization that
it's challenging.
It's challenging, and people give up, and I ended up giving up on it. I wanted to do it, and then I ended up saying, you know what? Because it was like with our podcast, I was like, well, okay. And I know me well enough to know that initially with things, I tend to get cold feet and frustrated, but I find ways to cut through and go, oh, well, we can do this, and maybe it's not how this would be done with Adobe, but with Audacity, this is how I can do this and make it work.
Yeah. So for years, I used, the predecessor to Adobe Cool Edit like you. Years
Loved
and years
it.
and years. Like I was playing with it at 16 on a pirated copy with like music I downloaded from Napster, right?
Sure.
Like I was cobbling together Green Day and other stuff. It was weird. But, it's funny. Had no idea I'd be in radio doing production years later, but had already started kind of messing around with those skills. Just like I'd been making mixtapes at home, again, kind of messing with those skills, not even realizing that later it would, probably pay off. Now I use Adobe Audition Creative Cloud, so I pay monthly,
Okay.
basically for a subscription for that. And I've kept it even after I left the station because I thought, well, there may be a reason that I would want to edit some audio, and I like having the software, and it's a business write-off. So,
Well, let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Is it something to where it's only monthly? In other words, you can't just buy it outright?
no, not any longer.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Smart for their part, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's the way you get it. So I'm okay with it because I like it. I like using it. Although Ashley was telling me about a piece of software that I paid for 1 month of it, may cancel it, don't know, haven't decided if I'm going to like it yet. But she started using it for her podcast. It's called Descript.
Yeah, I looked at it.
Descript. And it's just so different from what you and I are used to from years of editing audio where you're looking at a WAV file, right?
Yes.
With Descript, you're editing essentially a Word doc. AI transcribes the audio of your words, right? It puts it into words for you. It transcribes
Okay.
it. So then you're looking at a Word doc and you actually edit the Word doc and it edits the audio out. And it can take out all of your likes, and ands. Like there's I don't know, what would that be called? Like a macro or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's a functionality in it that if you hit remove filler words, it removes the filler words. And she says it's seamless.
Really?
Yeah. So I tried to use it for our last episode of Celebrating Women that I was editing. And I got so frustrated with it because it's not my normal workflow. I left it alone and I went back to what I knew.
Yeah, sure.
Which is totally fine. But I am going to continue to play with it because that is one of the ways I became the Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
Was I constantly was challenging myself to learn new ways of editing and new things. So I'm going to see how it works. I'm going to play with it for a little bit and see. I think it was $30 a month.
$30 a month. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, I was sitting there and I'm a big fan of free.
Well, sure. Yeah.
And the cool thing about Audacity, I will say this, is they've made constant improvements. And of course, there's old diehards that say, I'm using Audacity 1 and that's it. But they've done certain things with it to make it more Adobe-like. It used to be just something as simple as taking and moving audio on it. You had to like click on and click another thing and do this. And they've made it to where it has, the audio has tabs on it where you just move things. So
Interesting.
it's a little bit, it's a lot better.
GarageBand was kind of like that for me too. I tried to use, it's the native
Yes.
audio editing to Mac. And so I've been a Mac fan for years and years and years. Growing up with Cool Edit, literally growing up with Cool Edit, trying to use GarageBand the first time I had it on a Mac was so challenging because the functionality was just different. Things were in different places. You had to click different, areas of the audio to make cuts or to move it around. Man, it blew my mind. It was the most frustrating thing I did for a while. It's gotten better because I have used it in more recent years. It is more like Adobe now. And I don't know if that's because Adobe's like a standard in the industry. I feel like it might be.
Probably.
But yeah. So, I mean, I still use Adobe Audition. I'm a fan.
I was looking at something in the Audacity forum, and it was under the skins section. And skins is like, ladies and gentlemen, the face of what you're looking at, the GUI of your software. And one of the skins was being advertised. It will make it look just like Adobe. I was like, oh, well, this is interesting. It was $30 ago.
Yeah.
I can live with this.
Yeah.
And I usually have it to where it has I think it's called night. It's called night to where it's.
So it's the black version?
Yeah, I do that. Part of that was because before I had my cataracts done, I needed that. My office, I operate off a 31-inch screen.
Nice.
So I'm keeping that. Got the cataracts done. I'm keeping the TV. It's the ultimate man cave thing. I can go from
Sounds like
to
it.
go, let's see what's on. There's hockey on ABC. Yeah, we're doing that.
Nice. So you go back, you use a TV monitor essentially for your production.
Sure.
Wow. I'm operating off of a 15-inch MacBook.
But it works for you.
It does work for me. It is small though.
And that's the one thing that, you could stress, and we can stress to people, as you're looking at gear, can it work for you? Is it going to fit your price point? And whatever project you're doing, does it work for that?
I'm probably the opposite of you a little bit on the gear side.
Sure.
I tend to spend more, which makes my husband a little bit crazy. But it's just, okay, for example, the MacBook Pro that I'm currently using is relatively new.
Okay.
The MacBook Pro I had before that lasted 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, no viruses, never any issues. I mean, and did I spend a lot on it? Yes, I did. I think it was about $2,000 whenever I first bought it.
But 10 years
for 10
is a
years,
long time.
Yeah.
Because I usually think computers in terms of about, I don't know, 3-4 years.
Yeah.
My last desktop computer, and I bought it for $130 at Goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
And that lasted 6 years. And then it started, I noticed it was slowing down a little.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally it just died on me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And then it was, now the search for a new computer goes, and
Yep.
which is something else online. I think we went through 3 of them because there were certain things not working and go back. And then finally we have this now, which works great.
Yeah. And I love the mobility now, like of this. I think I mentioned that Ashley took the 2 mics into the other room, but she's taken like our whole setup. She's taken it on the road to Dallas to record with her partner Sean for her other podcast, the Lipedema Mamas. She has her own Zoom pod track.
Oh,
so
I see.
She bought that for herself, and then she has her own scan disc. But the 2 mics that we have in here, we have 3, but 2 of the mics she's taken before, and yeah, it's
That's
pretty cool.
awesome.
It is pretty cool. So like we could take this whole setup, kind of like a radio remote, and go be live somewhere else and do the podcast live. It's a possibility.
So go to our favorite coffee place. They wouldn't
We
mind if-
could.
they
They have
wouldn't-
a stage.
Yeah, they have a stage, or like they have the big tables where you can just strap the mics on, and they'll come over and say, "Okay, would you like more coffee? And what are you two doing here?"
We just showed up to do the show. We didn't ask for permission. We're going to ask for forgiveness. I'm kidding. We wouldn't do that. We would ask for permission. But yeah, it is. It's
Mandy's Clubhouse goes mobile. Again, trademark that. This has been another episode of The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandy Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley.
This is our show to explore radio,
Podcasting.
gear,
And the gearheads that use the gear.
and making money with a hot mic.
And other stuff in between.
We'd love for you to follow us on social media as well. Follow us on Facebook at The Unknown Morning Show and Instagram at The Unknown Morning Show. See us on YouTube at The Unknown Morning Show.
Thank you for listening to The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandy Montana.
I'm Chuck McKinley. And remember, be kind and rewind.